Good evening and welcome to the study session, City Council of the City of Moreno Valley Community Services District, City as Successor Agency for the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Moreno Valley Housing Authority. The City Council receives a separate stipend for CSD meetings. I now call this meeting to order on October 10th, 2017 at about 6:04 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by anyone that would like to volunteer. Okay, all right, okay. Councilor Marquez, and then if you could please remain standing, yeah.
Place your hand over your heart. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Please be seated. I don't think we have an invocation tonight, so. All right, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gaiba?
I'm here.
Councilmember Marquez?
Here.
Councilmember Cabrera?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baca?
Here.
Mayor Gutierrez?
Present. Staff introductions, please.
Pat Hakisnadis, City Clerk.
Regina Flores, Deputy City Clerk.
Marshall Ironman, Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer.
Martin Kusanowicz, City Attorney.
Tom DeSantis, Assistant City Manager.
Mike Lee, Economic Development Director.
Joel Ontiveros, Chief of Police.
Abdul Ahmed, Fire Chief.
Alan Brock, Community Development Director.
Okay. It is now time for public comments on the matters on the agenda only. So we do have two items on the agenda. One is the WRCOG to just receive an update and study of it. And then we also have A2, which is discussion regarding regulation of commercial cannabis activities in the city. So if there's anything that you'd like to talk about, in any of those two items, this is the time to come up for public comments. There's a 3-minute time limit per person, and it can only be on those two subjects. Please complete and submit a blue speaker slip to the city clerk. All remarks and questions shall be addressed to the presiding officer or to the city council in general. And I ask that all speakers keep their comments respectful towards each other, especially the individuals that are at the podium speaking. Madam Clerk, how many speakers do we have tonight?
We have 2 speaker cards. The first one has 2 names and a third person.
Okay.
So it's John Rodriguez Edwin oh my God, I'm going to mispronounce his name.
Okay. Or Edwin. Okay.
And Tom Jarrell Sr.
Okay.
Junior, sorry.
Tom Drill Jr. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members and staff members, respectable public. My name is John Rodriguez, and I'm here with Edwin Movagarian. We have been in the cannabis industry for quite some time now through maladies that have occurred to both of us, whether it be cancer and or other type of maladies. We've seen the positives and the positive side. We realize that you have a study session going this afternoon, and we are here to lend a helping hand where we have already in other cities have implemented and assisted in the implementation in a couple of the other cities of the cannabis under the state guidelines. And we offer our services in terms of assisting staff, whether it be in quantifying some of the possible numbers and or assisting in just understanding what the potential positives are on the cannabis side. With me, Mr. Movagarian, if you'd like to say a couple of words.
Just here to assist the staff with any questions, concerns they may have regarding other cities that have already started the process of legalizing at the state level. So feel free to ask any questions or reach out to us.
Okay. Next speaker.
Evening, Mayor Gutierrez,
Good evening,
Mayor Pro
Tom.
Tem Baca, and council members, members of the staff and the public, both here in the chambers and watching at home on MV3 TV or on the internet. Thank you for allowing us to address the council. First, quick comment on WRCOG. Mr. Bishop, I always enjoyed his presentations. The guy is really so focused and organized and very just gives you a bundle of information in a short, concise time. But one of the things, I haven't looked at their more recent financial report where they show where they distributed the money, but I held one up about 4 years ago. It was really a great model. It's simple, it's easy to read, tells you where the money comes in, where it goes out, what percentages, where it's going. You know, it's nicely balanced with pictures and stuff. It's not all fluff, but it's got a lot of meat to it, but in a nice, simple, layperson's easy. It's not all, you know, deep stuff that you gotta have a accountant's degree to read. Second issue I want to talk about is the marijuana ordinancing. And, you know, some things you just run on gut instinct. And I have no personal animus. I mean, I've got a lot of friends that, shall we say, enjoy the sport, if you will. But so, I mean, it's their personal choice. But my concern is I'm guessing there's a good 45,000 kids in this town. And, you know, even if it filters down to where 5% of them are getting into that stuff, that's 2,000 kids. And I met a couple kids at our center. They were all lit up, and they looked like they were under 18. And let me tell you, they didn't impress me as rocket scientists. And, you know, we're trying to attract industry, and I see it as a potential for continuing to downgrade our schools, our grade averages. And if you want to attract executives, you want to attract higher home values, higher tax base, that's the first thing people are going to look at. So I just asked you to factor that in. I also, there's tons of studies coming out. I mean, the marijuana today is not what was around when I was an age, you know, it was popular. And it's, you know, incredibly powerful. So there's still a lot of new studies, and by very liberal entities are saying, hey, here's some of the issues with it. So I suggest you take good time to factor all that in your final judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Mayor, we have 4 more speakers.
Okay.
Crystal Williams, Michael Renick, Lauren Dominguez.
Okay. If we can have Crystal approach the podium, and then Michael and Lauren, if you can please get ready.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Crystal Williams.
Good evening. Hi.
Hi. I'm going to touch base real quick on the commercial cannabis and the public safety and tackling some of the marijuana black market activities. So I'm a married mother with 2 children. You know, I have my little boy and my little girl. And so this whole subject is, you know, very important to me. I am also a real estate agent. I'm working in and out of several different communities. I do want to say that I'm in favor of the legalization of marijuana and allowing for the ordinances to be put in place, creating the storefronts and the cultivation centers. I do not smoke marijuana, nor do I plan to, but I do have several friends and family that do use it for anything ranging from stage 4 cancer to just needing something with anxiety or to help with anxiety and sleep. As far as public safety goes, the statistics surrounding the violent crimes and the killings, it's occurring right now under the marijuana prohibition. Prohibiting marijuana allows for the drug cartels and the gangs to monopolize on this black market. Marijuana is filled with chemicals that aren't tested. It's causing violence, and they're using our children as drug runners. There's an enormous demand for marijuana with high profit motives, and these people use marijuana to fund their more serious activities. Many of the houses in your own backyard are actually grow houses, believe it or not. A lot of those houses that you walk past with your family, your kids are riding their bikes past them, they're filled with marijuana plants. They're stealing power, and those plants are then converted and sold into the black market. Today, the marijuana laws are actually putting the children in harm's way. Today, it's easier for kids to get marijuana than it is for them to get alcohol, because illegal drug dealers, they don't care. They will sell to anyone. They do not check ID. Former U.S. Attorney John McKay says that he is convinced that the black market is creating so much money for these bad characters and creating so much violence that legalizing marijuana and passing ordinances will actually increase public safety and eliminate such crime. By legalizing, regulating, and taxing the marijuana industry, We can eliminate the black market and put the cartel and the gangs somewhat out of business. We can allow for the development of legitimate businesses, legitimate business people running these businesses, just as we do with alcohol. By creating highly regulated cultivation centers, marijuana can be grown clean of the harmful chemicals and tested in a secure facility under surveillance and eliminating these home grows and the violence. By having a limited amount of licensed storefronts, adults 21 years and older can purchase marijuana safely and legally. By taxing the marijuana sales, an astronomical amount of tax revenue will be generated for the city, the county, and the state. This revenue can be used for local governments, just like fire, police, education, and prosecution for the more, predominant serious crimes. So as I close, I want you to consider that state by state, marijuana is going to become recreational legal. There are cities now passing ordinances allowing for the cultivation in the retail stores. And whether it's in this city or the city next door, it will be here and it will be around all of us. So bringing and allowing this ordinance to go into a place, it's going to create jobs, generate a ton of tax revenue, and monitor safe places for people to grow and sell cannabis. Thank you.
And next speaker is Michael, but before Michael, just really quick, can we make sure that we have the timer? Okay, thank you. Okay, Michael?
I brought. Good evening, Councilman.
Hey, good evening.
I brought some institute from Cato Institute analysis. I would like you guys pass out for you guys.
Oh, okay. But go ahead and start because the timer's still going.
Okay.
So.
Good
Yeah,
evening.
We'll just start it over. We'll start it over. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just a analysis that I found that I wanted to give to you guys. It's one that I found has a very unbiased approach to it, and I just wanted you guys to make sure that you have something current and up to date. The topics I want to touch on is kind of where we are at right now with the state law and the cannabis. What a lot of people sometimes feel is that we're contemplating whether or not to legalize marijuana, where that has already been done in the state. The state has already allowed the use of recreational marijuana. As of the 1st, the law goes into effect. What that also means is that any cities that do not have an ordinance in place are subject to the state kind of having their will with how it's going to go with their licensing procedure and everything as far as that goes. Another thing which a lot of people fail to realize is along with that is every house in the neighborhood, back to back to back, is legally allowed to have 6 plants growing in it at all times. And there's nothing that the city can possibly do about it because it's a state law. And what scares me the most about that, and being a father myself, is that that's not going to be sold legally. That's not going to be sold through a regulated source. That's going to be either held for one's own personal use, but more than likely given out to friends, family, and it's not going to be controlled as it would be if there was being sold through a legal source. So with that being said, what happens without an ordinance being placed, as Crystal mentioned, is that the black market does have the ability to run kind of free and rampant. They don't want you to pass an ordinance. They want to continue business as usual without anything stopping them. We want to keep this out of kids' hands. That's the ultimate goal. And without passing an ordinance, there's no way to even start to make a difference in the problem that we have now. And passing an ordinance can do many things. I mean, we can have associations that can put funds together to put rewards up for shutting down illegal operations. There's tax dollars that can be put up for police and fire department. So really, passing an ordinance is the safest choice that we can possibly come to. I want to touch basis on some of this on this Cato Institute. If you go back to page 7 on the side there, and you can obviously go into it in more detail, But the it says limited available data for Colorado and Alaska show obvious effects. So no obvious effects in the legalization on the youth of marijuana use. So really, I don't have time to go into it, obviously, but there's a lot of information that I would like you guys to look over into this. And also, I know there's issues with extractions and BHOs. And
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, next speaker, Lauren.
Good evening. My name's Lauren. I'm also pro-cannabis and having it in the city legalized and with ordinance. I don't want to repeat everything that everyone has said. I too am a mom, and I think that it's very important that instead of being scared of change, it's important that you take control of the change and you find the benefits in it, because at the end of the day, it's already happening. And many people are scared that cannabis is going to cause all these problems, or, you know, their children are going to use it. But there's already many things out there that people use and abuse. And at the end of the day, we all have choices. And as parents, it's important that we are there for our children. We educate them, and the city educates them. In addition to that, I think that if we make the rules and regulations and find the benefits in it, it'll end up being a win for the city as a whole. I have family that lives right down the street off Mars Court, so it's not like I'm just someone that, you know, just wants to benefit from it or isn't from the city. I do think of the city as a whole because I have family that lives here. My brothers grew up here for 5 years, a couple years ago, and I think that your city is growing and developing, and instead of trying to fight the change, it'd be better to make rules that are going to benefit you and educate your people. And it's like I said, as far as children go, there's things that are already available, and that's really it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Jason, followed by Roy.
How you guys doing tonight? So I want to touch base on the passing of the commercial cannabis.
Oh, if you could just speak into the microphone. Just, you can move it up.
I want to touch base on the commercial cannabis. As far as going along with that ordinance, I'm all for it. I do have a niece that suffers from epileptic seizures. They've tried everything under the sun for the past 7 years, and nothing has been able to help her except for CBD, which comes from the cannabis plant. It's everybody in here has what's called the endocannabinoid system, and the only thing that refills that system and creates balance between the mind and body is the CBD, and that does not get you high, and it's the only thing that stops these seizures, and it stops them within seconds. So that's another big thing that I think the city does need, and I think we need to put a control on this. There's a lot of, black market activity, and we need to have controlled facilities. We need to tax it, and we need to benefit from it all at once. And we need to provide safe access for the people and the patients of Moreno Valley. And yeah, that's really it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Roy?
Yeah, the voters voted overwhelmingly, and Mary Jane kicked the door wide open in 2016. It's here, it's coming, it's going to be here January 1st. What I want to touch on is commercial cultivation, because I hear a lot about talking about jobs. I hear it from staff, I hear it from you up on the dais. Commercial cultivation, you got trimmers that can make $30,000 to $60,000 per year. Assistant growers, master growers that can make $60,000 to $100,000 a year. Master growers, $100,000 plus. Proprietors of it, $50,000 to $1 million. It could provide lots of jobs and industry to this area. And the commercial cultivation part pretty much stops or does not have a law enforcement component to it that I believe like sales does too. So that's another opportunity we should take, because Lord knows this city has flushed many opportunities down the toilet and even dozed some of our best ones down just to show you how we can do it. Let's turn this thing around. We have the opportunity to provide jobs for our people, to benefit from the industry. Because trying to say that it's not going to be here or none of that, that ship has already sailed. So that argument's off the table. The choice we have is, are we going to take the economic benefits that we can so we can give the police officers the money they need to go bust the honey oil labs or the illegal operations? That's what we need to be looking at, is how we are going to take advantage of it both ways. And I believe if you look at things in the prism, because I'm looking at Forbes, I'm looking at Bloomberg, the new industry and where the growth is marijuana. 500,000 new jobs coming in. Manufacturing jobs, we're going to lose 500,000 by 2021. We're going to lose 383 public employees, you over there in the well, by 2022. So we're going to have to figure out why we are going to provide and how we're going to provide economic opportunity for the people of Moreno Valley. This is one area. This is the growth area. Are we going to take advantage of it? That's what your job is to do. Your job is to look out for all of us in the city and make the best possible decisions we can. So I encourage you to approach this with an open mind and look at all the facts and not look at things so much as, or not believe the hype or some of the scare tactics that some people will put on. Let's deal with it honestly. Let's put the best policies we can for Moreno Valley, for the city of Moreno Valley, for the citizens of Moreno Valley, so we can all benefit.
Thank you, Roy. Madam Clerk, we have Leroy and Tyrone.
And Tyrone Rogers.
Okay.
How's everybody doing?
Good evening.
Yeah, I just want to belly off what everybody else said. I am a resident of Moreno Valley, been here 19 years. And a lot of what they're saying is true as far as the growth and us being able to kind of see it in that same type of eye. I don't want to be up here very long, but I'm not a smoker or anything like that. But I do believe that there's some opportunities for the city.
Thank you so much, Leroy. Tyrone?
Good afternoon. My name is Tyrone Rogers. I'm a 12-year retired vet from the NFL. I own a security company, and I have a son that's artistic. The uses of medical marijuana is useful in so many different ways. My stepfather is a vet, and he's legally blind now with cancer, and we use a type of medical marijuana to help him. By playing 12 years of professional ball, I never used medical marijuana, never tested positive or anything, and don't use it now. But I use it with my stepfather and my son. So I'm for it, for the medical use, and then research of different cities have brought themselves in a positive note in the financial. I think it would help us with our law enforcement, which we need, and our city officials. It'll help, with the funding, with everything. There's so many different avenues with growing the dispensaries, as long as we get the tax money out of it, so long as it's regulated correctly. So that's everything. I hope we pass it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two more speakers, Christopher Henry and Jem Montes.
Okay. Right after those two, I'm going to close the comments. Oh, sure, go ahead. Is it one for everybody, or is just one?
Just one. I didn't.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate the time to talk. I'm a representative of SC4, Southern California Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. We work throughout Southern California to help the cities put in place responsible regulation. I passed you a couple pamphlets, brochures, kind of what we've done in San Jacinto, how we've helped them shape their ordinance and implement it and continue to implement it. We are currently in control of about 300,000 square feet, about 300,000 square feet worth of cultivation, and currently seeking dispensary licenses. We're here to support you guys. We're here to guide you how to properly implement responsible regulation, and would like to, just offer our expertise to you. We have general counsel on hand, and our services, for the most part, are free of charge. I'm a resident of Moreno Valley, and it came to my attention at the last minute that this meeting was taking place. I thought I'd just come in and kind of give an introduction, and maybe we could sit down and speak some time and move this thing forward in the city. I think it'll be good for Moreno Valley. I think it'll bring quite a few jobs. When you have the opportunity to look through some of those brochures that I left with you, you'll kind of see some of the numbers on projected job growth that we've seen in other cities. And we're here to help and support you. And anything that we can do, we definitely reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And so are you mostly like a consultant?
We are a consulting firm. We're a nonprofit 501c6 firm. So we kind of work on a consulting basis. We do a lot of workshops with the city. So what we'll do is we'll come in, kind of engage you, find out exactly where you're trying to take cannabis in the city, how you're trying to license it, how you're trying to regulate it, kind of compare what you're putting together in line with what the state is doing, and then as a whole, recommend what would work best for the city based on what we've seen in the past, have done in the past. We like to work with the cities more than do initiatives. I'll be honest with you. We've done initiatives in other cities and have succeeded. We currently have an initiative on schedule in Jurupa Valley, and there's one in Hemet that you're going to become aware of probably the next couple days. So we do initiatives. It's easier for us to work with the cities to implement things rather than try to push something by you. So definitely reach out to us. Would love to sit down with you guys and put something forward.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
No problem. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. Next speaker, please. Jem.
Hi, my name is Jem Montez. I'm here representing Inland Empire Normal. Normal is one of the oldest advocacy groups supporting the reform of responsible marijuana law. We've been around for over 20 years. We're a national organization. The Inland Empire chapter is very active on foot, I would say. I also am affiliated with ASA, Americans for Safe Access. I'm a patient as well. I just had another surgery 2 weeks ago with the City of Hope. Wanted to let you know the City of Hope is growing in needles, which is great. I'm really glad to hear that, but I kind of have the full circle thing there going on. I also do compliance, and I want to thank you first and foremost for talking about this issue. I hope you guys can get something pulled together by the end of the year. It's really important for those who want to go forward with state licensing, and I just want to offer my services if there's anything that you guys do need. We do have attorneys that we work with. We have a legal board. They can help to support any of your ideas. We do workshops. I also work with, like I said, other compliance agencies. And other than just the obvious things as far as like the economics and so forth, there's other things that need to be addressed as far as like, like the waste, things that people haven't thought of in the past. How are we gonna get rid of waste, all the different environmental issues and things like that, and people don't really take those into consideration. And I think we have to kind of look ahead of the curve. I've worked with World Oil and trying to put together some programs and stuff like that. So thank you again. I will leave my card somewhere, and I hope to hear from one of you.
Okay. One more? Pat? Okay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close the public comments. And so we're going to go to our first item. And our first item is the Western Riverside Council of Governments WRCOG update. And we'll have a report of city manager. And then we're just going to let him do his presentation first, and then we can ask questions after.
Certainly, that's, we all know Rick Bishop, Executive Director of WRCOG, and he's kind enough to come this evening and present an update to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, members of the audience, pleasure to be here. My name is Rick Bishop. I'm the Executive Director of the Western Riverside Council of Governments. Just wanted to provide you with an overview of activities that we're working on. I know that all but the Member Cabrera, who I have yet to meet and look forward to working with, you're all intimately involved in a number of regional issues and regional boards, and so I appreciate that very much, and it makes it really much easier to get through this presentation quickly, so I'll do my best to do so. WRCOG, Western Riverside Council of Governments, also known as WRCOG, our sub-region, if you take a look at a map, is very large. It's one of the fastest growing areas in the state, if not the nation. It spans furthest to the west of the city of Corona, then out to the east to Banning and the area owned by the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, and then south all the way down to Temecula. But one thing that's important is that we typically look at maps of cities and think about city boundaries, but if you really look at the real world, there are no boundaries. There's no city boundaries, there's no county boundaries, there's no school district boundaries, wastewater district boundaries, so on and so forth. And so I think this map is somewhat emblematic of what a council of governments really is, and we're intended to deal with issues that transcend jurisdictional boundaries, recognizing that if there's an issue that you have in Moreno Valley, whether it pertains to transportation or energy or environment or whatever, chances are that your neighbor jurisdictions have the same issue. And so our goal is to, rather than having our 18 member agencies, cities and county, dealing with an issue 18 different times, perhaps there's a way to do it one time and achieve some economies of scale. As I mentioned before, Western Riverside County is growing very quickly. It's growing at different rates depending on which jurisdiction you're in. You have more populated and evolved jurisdictions such as Moreno Valley and Riverside and Corona, and then you have sort of the next edge cities such as Banning and Beaumont, Calamasa that are on the cusp of growth. But collectively, we have jurisdictions in our subregion that are in different evolutional stages of their development. And so it's important for us to be able to be sensitive and understanding of the various development-related and development-pressured issues that they all face. And this is why councils of governments and sub-regional agencies exist. And if you take a look at Southern California, for example, there are about 14 similar agencies to WRCOG. I particularly like this map because we're smack dab in the center of it all, not by intention, but by geography. But you can see there are different councils of governments and related associations in Southern California. Our companion agency in eastern Riverside County is the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. They undertake many programs like us. So what makes us different and unique from regional agencies? I mentioned earlier, you're all involved in the Riverside County Transportation Commission, the Riverside Transit Agency, the Riverside Conservation Authority. There are various water districts, wastewater districts, school districts. These are all referred to as single-purpose agencies, which means that they focus on one thing, and they do it all really well. And I think we're very fortunate to have as partners these single-purpose agencies that do their work so well in Western Riverside County. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and there are many other issues that don't fit neatly into the auspices of these particular single-purpose agencies. And so councils of governments, by actually not having defined role, actually provide that role, and that is this. The lack of specific assignments, so if you take a look at WRCOG's founding agreements, there is no requirement for us to do any particular thing. We're a consensus-building agency, which actually at first seems a little bit troubling, but that lack of specific assignment creates a lot of flexibility so that WRCOG can serve a function that I think is very valuable and very needed to our participating member agencies, and that is, what do you want to achieve? What are the issues that you think are germane and valuable for a regional body to undertake as opposed to you undertaking on your own as a single jurisdiction? And so that's the value that we see as WRCOG is what do the members want us to do, not necessarily what we have to do. And so that flexibility, as you'll see in this slide, has really resulted in a wide variety and a wide menu of tasks that we undertake on your behalf. We do have 6 focus areas that have been identified by our executive committee. It was first identified in 2011 and then confirmed or affirmed in 2014. and they really all center around economic development. But underneath the economic development guys, you've got education, energy and environment, health, water and wastewater, and transportation. So those 5 issues underneath economic development are really important to us, because we recognize that if we make advances in any one of those issues, then we actually do achieve quality of life, which results in economic development. So we're really focused on being able to do things that fit within those boxes, and we can do that. We operate with a committee that I think those of you and your staff that participate in all of our committees, the whole goal for us is that by the time we have recommendations and thoughts that are provided to our executive committee, and Dr. Gutierrez serves as the city's representative to our executive committee, and we thank you for your time and commitment. But the goal for WRCOG is that by the time a recommendation gets to our executive committee, that it's been vetted by all of your staff, by the staff in all of our member agencies and jurisdictions. That includes your city managers, that includes your public works directors, that includes your planning directors, that includes your finance directors. So those are basically our standing committees. And so we're very proud of the fact that as labor as intensive that is, and the requirements that it takes for your staff to participate in those committees, it creates an environment where we're very secure that recommendations to get to the executive committee have been vetted by your own staff, and that makes for the process to move very quickly. Just wanted to touch on a few, not all of the programs we operate, but just some of the ones that are relatively new or are relatively established. Our Beyond program is a program that we started a couple years ago, and to date it's provided nearly $4 million to all of our member agencies to, in fact, implement projects that meet one of those 6 goals that were mentioned earlier. In the city of Moreno Valley, I think to date we've provided over $300,000 for a variety of projects that you select. It's either new funding or it's funding that augments existing funding sources for you to do some things that are important to you and your constituents. And so we're very, very pleased to be able to provide that money, and that program hopefully will continue. We're in the process of undertaking a couple of pretty significant regional energy programs. One is to purchase all of the purchase up to 48,000 streetlights in the subregion from Southern California Edison, retrofit them to LED, which is going to provide significant savings, and then operate and maintain them all under a single contract, which does provide cost savings, and it also provides the participating jurisdictions the opportunity to implement a number of smart city applications on those poles. So when you own those poles, you can do things with those poles that might improve public safety or create other revenue generating opportunities. Another issue that we're working on with all of our members is something referred to as community choice aggregation, and that's where local governments actually partner together to become purchasers of energy and then provide that on an option for an additional energy option to your constituents. Right now, you've got Southern California Edison as the single purveyor of energy unless you have your own utility. This provides an option to that, and we're working with our member jurisdictions to look into the feasibility of doing so. We think by doing so, based on a feasibility study that we've performed and based on actual results from 7 or 8 of these entities that exist throughout California, that you can provide energy at a lower cost. You can also provide a greener mix of energy. But more importantly is you're providing customers and consumers with a choice in the energy that they desire to procure. We also recently have taken over the management responsibilities for the Riverside County Habitat Conservation Agency. This is an agency that provides habitat for the Stevens kangaroo rat. The city of Moreno Valley, and Councilmember Marquez is your representative on that board. We now have a administrative services agreement with the county where we provide the staff support to that in a manner that provides some cost efficiencies in doing so. About 40,000 acres of SKR area in the subregion. We also have made available about $400,000 to support a public service fellowship program. This started about 2 years ago. We're in the 2nd year of that. The idea there is to take the best and brightest students that are interested in public policy and engineering and other potential public applications within jurisdictions such as Moreno Valley, place them in the city working in prominent positions, working nearly full-time, and basically to provide these college students the exposure to city government in an effort to have them essentially fall in love with working for cities, and also have you fall in love with these fellows. You have a fellow by the name of Joy Chen that's working, I believe, in your planning department right now, nearly full time. And so this is something that was an idea that was provided to us a couple years ago by our city managers, and we've been able to evolve it into a program that we think has been very successful to date. We also host, as you know, a number of conferences and events that are intended to educate and inform and even inspire elected officials, staff, and members of the public. Some of the big ones, of course, our annual General Assembly. We've been holding now we've had 2 years running a Future of Cities conference where we look at issues that we think cities need to be dialed into in the future. We've been a co-host of the Riverside County Water Task Force to involve and engage members of the public in the importance of water issues. And then we host a number of bus tours and other workshops, and we try to notify folks when they come about. Of course, our TUMF program, probably one of our signature programs. It's the largest multi-jurisdictional transportation fee program that we know of in the country. It's intended to provide an additional funding source for development and improvement of our transportation infrastructure, especially our regional transportation infrastructure here in western Riverside County. In Moreno Valley, the benefits are certainly very extensive. If you take a look at that series of concentric circles, the outermost circle is about a 10-mile radius from the city. TUMF will provide about $730 million worth of improvements within your city. And that's important to know because your city residents travel outside of the city. We all know that. And so it's important that transportation infrastructure be improved, not just in Moreno Valley, but your residents benefit from improvements made outside of Moreno Valley. Just to give you an indication, we took a look at recent census data that showed that about less than 20% of Moreno Valley residents in their commute stay within the city to work. And that's common within most of the jurisdictions in western Riverside County. It sounds pretty low, but it is, but it's also very common. What that means is that they're commuting to other areas within the sub-region or into other counties, and thus it really exacerbates the importance of being able to have a regional transportation system that benefits them. I think you know some of the major projects that have been improved through TUMF dollars: the Nason Street interchange on SR 60, the Moreno Beach Drive interchange, Paris Boulevard widening, Heacock Street widening, some transit improvements as well, and then improvements that are not necessarily in the city, but benefit your city residents as they commute in and about. In all, I know this is a little bit hard to see, but in our latest Nexus study, which is the technical document that sets the stage and is the support document for the TUMF fee, there is about, at the very bottom there, nearly $250 million in TUMF projects within the city that are included in that report. So a very valuable program for you in the city, and we appreciate all the work that you do with us. So what's working for WRCOG? There's really about 6 things. One, our success is based on finding niches that serve our member agencies' interests. And so we're really not looking at doing things that are already being done, but we're looking at finding niches for things that aren't being done, and especially aren't being done at the regional scale. So we look for benefit in that area. We also found that there's really value for us to be a sounding board for ideas, and that's precisely why we use all of the committees that we have: our planning directors, our public works directors, our finance directors, our technical advisory committee, which includes the city managers, as well as the executive committee. Is that we see ourselves as a place where if there's a regional idea, we want to hear about it, and then we can vet it and we can find out whether or not it's something that we can actually undertake successfully on behalf of our members. We need to stay true to our mission as well, and that's the fact that we're a regional agency, but we understand that local control is paramount to you. And so our mission is to respect local control and to provide perspective and let you decide what kinds of tasks you want to assign to us. We're nothing if we're not cost effective. If we can't provide cost effective solutions to you, then quite frankly, we shouldn't be in business. And so that's really one of our foremost goals and objectives as we move ahead. You have to be willing to take some risks, and this doesn't mean like crazy risks as anything. I know cities and counties tend to be risk adverse, but I think you know that the environment and the economy is changing, and so we need to sort of be able to step out of our traditional boxes and think a little bit outside what we are normally comfortable in doing. And I think we've been fortunate to have elected officials and staff from all of our member cities and including the city of Moreno Valley. Leadership is really critical, and we've been very fortunate to have a great working relationship with the city council here and with all the staff. I know Michelle leads that effort, and Tom, as well as all of the other city staff. So I think if nothing, we really are successful because of the leadership and the direction that you give us. So that's in a nutshell. I appreciate the opportunity. If you or any of the members of the audience have any questions, want to know more about us, feel free to ask me. We'd be happy to come out and give presentations. You can also access our website to find out more from us, given the brief amount of time that I've been here. So thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Thank you, Rick. And thank you so much for the presentation. And I didn't see you in the audience, or I would have recognized you. But you do a great job with WRCOG leading the effort there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let me see if there's anybody. You have any comments? Just press your speaker request, or no? Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Rick.
you all.
You have a good night.
All
Take care. Okay. We're moving on to item A2, discussion regarding the regulation of commercial cannabis activities in the city. We'll start off with a report of the city attorney.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Again, this item is before you in a study session format. Though we're not looking for any decisions to be made tonight, staff is looking to obtain direction from the council with regard to the format that staff should compose and bring back to you for regulating commercial cannabis activity in the city. As the report will outline, the range is from a total ban, which is in place today, to regulating and allowing any and all of the 4 uses that generally are considered to be commercial cannabis activity. Obviously, we're all aware of the state law, which has been passed by the voters and legislated by the state, and that state law allows recreational use of cannabis in addition to the medical use that was authorized several years ago. Your staff report contains attachments from the fire department and police departments, which outline some of the matters and issues related to permitting commercial cannabis activity in the city. Staff members from those departments, as well as planning, city attorney's office, city manager, are here to answer any questions and to add anything after the staff report, which you may wish to hear and consider. As I mentioned, currently the code prohibits any commercial cannabis activity in the city. That was installed through an urgency ordinance, which was adopted by the council in November of 2016. That ordinance was extended and will actually be before you at the next meeting for one more additional extension, which will provide time for staff and the council to develop and adopt permanent cannabis regulations. The commercial cannabis activities can be divided into 4 sections, and these are covered by the staff report, but I'll go over them briefly. First of all, dispensaries, which are a retail outlet where a customer can walk in and purchase cannabis products for consumption. Next is cultivation, and that is where cannabis is grown, generally in indoor settings, to be harvested and used for the intended uses in retail sales and in medical uses. Testing labs, which are another form of commercial activity, those are labs which test the product that travels from the cultivation to the distribution, to the manufacturing, and ultimately to the retails. And manufacturing is basically processing of the raw product into consumable product, whether that is for recreational purposes or for medical purposes. As with any activity that is regulated by the city is entitled to recover its costs in regulation, and those are done by fees that would be imposed on an activity should the council decide to move forward and consider regulation of any of these activities. These fees would be set by the master fee schedule and would reflect the recovery of the costs, the actual costs that the city would incur in regulating and processing applications. And those would start from the cost of someone walking in and applying for a conditional use permit, for example, or a permit, all the way through the cost of auditing and security checks, as well as any impacts that those business activities would have on our law enforcement and safety personnel. Obviously, those can only reflect the actual costs incurred and basically a recovery. The other avenue of funds flowing to the city is a revenue source, and the revenue source is the taxation. Obviously, that has to be put before the voters, and should the voters approve a tax on any commercial activity in the city, should the council decide to move forward with that, that tax would be a general revenue. It would go to the general fund and can be used by the council and by the city for any purposes otherwise legally authorized through the general fund. So now you're looking at a revenue source versus a recovery source. Again, public safety has provided you with information regarding some of the aspects of this activity in other jurisdictions. Obviously, if the council move forward with directing staff to consider regulating and permitting some of these activities, staff envisions that to be a two-pronged process which would be moved forward concurrently. The first would be the land use aspect of it, which would basically consider and look at where within the city, in what zones, under what circumstances, would these uses potentially could be located and permitted subject to a conditional use permit. That's basically a planning commission function. Somebody applying for a conditional use permit under those circumstances would basically process that permit in the same way as any other conditional use permit is processed. Once the zones and the development standards are established. The second prong of regulation would be the permitting or the licensing. That ordinance would most likely rest in Chapter 5, I believe, of our code, and basically that would be how does the city regulate the activity from a public safety standpoint, from the auditing standpoint. That would provide the ability to ensure that all of personnel has safety, background checks, that there are safety and security measures that are attached to any facility, whether that's a dispensary or a cultivation or anything else. It would set out the operating hours. It would set out all of the requirements, operational requirements that the city can impose on these activities. And once those activities and those requirements are met, city would issue a permit, a license basically to operate, not a business license, but a cannabis permit. That permit can be revoked in the event that any of the conditions that would be imposed are not met by a potential, by an operator. Again, all of these can be considered and put into place should you direct us to move forward with consideration of allowing and regulating some of these activities. Again, with regard to the schedule, schedule would involve code amendments, which are done through ordinances. Chapter 9, which is the land use and zoning regulations, need to go through the Planning Commission and come before you for consideration and potential approval. And the regulatory licensing would go directly to you and can be moved forward directly through the council. The process, in my past experience, is an extensive, time-consuming process, and obviously, depending on the direction we receive from you tonight, that process would be initiated if desired. For tonight, your alternatives basically include giving us direction. Was the council wishing to continue with a permanent ban and complete ban of cannabis activity in the city? In which case we would prepare an ordinance, which would be a permanent ordinance to do so. That would be before you in potentially a month. The other alternative is to permit one or any number of the 4 activities that could be considered as commercial activities in the city. Those, again, would include dispensaries, would include manufacturing, testing, or cultivation. With that, I will submit, and if you have any questions, we're all here to respond to those. Thank you.
And I'll go ahead and entertain questions or comments from the council. If you have any questions, go ahead and press your speaker. Oh yeah, actually, before we do that, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to call up some subject matter experts Okay, John Rodriguez, followed by Michael Rednick.
Good evening. Your assistants are here.
Okay, earlier I heard you speak about what you've done in other cities, and my concern today is that I'm not very well versed in this industry, so I'm looking for your knowledge based on your experience, and I keep hearing the January 1st, 2018 date. So if you can put that into perspective and what needs to be done, and if it's not done, what are the consequences? So if you can touch on that.
With that, I believe you're talking about the Tier 1 level, and I'm going to defer to my counterpart, Mr. Movagarian. Edwin?
Basically, what that did is when the state came up with the AB 266 requirements, they said they're expecting about 20,000 applications go through submitted in January 1st. So the Tier 1 came in saying that if you were open and operating by December 31st, 2017, you would be eligible to submit an application with the state level. So that's basically what that is. That does not limit the number of operators after January 1st. It basically says that at that point, you'll be one of the 20,000 applicants. So you're going to be on top of the pile or on the bottom of the pile. The state is still behind on regulating. They're still going through it. They're still having seminars as far as question and answer seminars with operators. And so they're still behind, but they have direction from the governor to impose this cannabis law come January 1st, 2018. So at what level, at what caliber, nobody knows, but everybody's shooting for that to be open and operating by December 31st, 2017, to be in a first tier, to be state certified.
Okay, I understand that the applications have to be submitted to the state. Does the city where the person operates need to have issued a permit to that operator?
Correct. The state is putting a burden on the cities, saying that the operators have to be permitted, licensed through a local jurisdiction before they can apply for a state license. So yes, we do have to have a city license in hand. Some do CUPs and some don't, before we can apply for a state license.
And in your experience, which cities have CUPs? Why and why not?
CUP is more of a solid foundation. You're basically permitting that the business of cannabis to be performed in that zone. City of Maywood was very, very similar to where you guys are right now. They had a ban. They removed the ban. They introduced an ordinance, and including licensing and also a CUP process. So
Do you know how long it took for that process in Maywood?
It took start to finish. It took about 3 years. But that was first of its kind. Nobody had ever done it before, so there was a lot of issues back and forth. And now that we've done one and we know exactly what the time frame, the time in between readings and the public hearings and public announcements, it should be condensed much quicker. There should be an answer for the city attorney to answer, but it depends on how quickly the staff moves and the counselors, how aggressive they are. So it could be done in a timely manner. It just, there's different procedures, there's different steps, there's different time frames in between first reading, second reading, 30-day period, the public notification, and so on. So,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
I'd like to say, in addition to that, with the Maywood, although it did take the 3 years in Maywood, it was an extensive learning process for both council as well as applicants and or advisors. So one thing that would be of positive here would be to go ahead and have staff work with a city or cities like Maywood that have already established their ordinances and maybe borrow, rather than recreate the wheel, see what they've done and augment to what they've done based on what your community would benefit from.
Just really quick before I open it up to the others, would you say, let's say for example, obviously you mentioned, prior to December 31st, if not, they won't be able to apply for a temporary license from the state?
No, there's no temporary license. What they're going to issue is pretty much a ticket saying that you've met all the requirements for the local jurisdiction. Now you're waiting to be qualified under state regulation. So As long as you're within the boundary guidelines of your city, the state should not have any issues issuing you a state license. But again, the burden always falls on the local government. You know, the policing, the zoning. So.
And in your professional opinion, would you say that a city, let's say from a ban to, let's say, for example, allowing it, could do that by January 1st?
It could be done. Again, what John said, you know, it's basically writing an ordinance is taking all the zoning requirements and from building and safety to all the other requirements that you have and condensing it into like this paper format so people can read and understand. City of Maywood is a 1.18 mile square radius city that had 8 schools, 3 churches, 4 public parks, 1 rehab center. So it's really, really difficult to draft an ordinance and get the zoning right. But from what I see in Moreno Valley, it should not be an issue. You know, the green zones that does allow this type of businesses to operate within. 600 foot away from any sensitive use areas is a state guideline requirement. So as long as you don't impose that guideline, you should be fine, as far as zoning is concerned.
Okay, I'll have Councilmember Marquez. You have questions to them or to the staff? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Have you met with our members of my colleagues here at all prior to this meeting?
No, it's my first time. I've passed
Both
through
of
it.
you?
I haven't. No, I have not.
And John, have you?
Yes, I met briefly with the council member, the mayor pro tem.
It's kind of funny how you're bringing this forward to us, but you only met with one council person. I was never informed on any of this. So what is your background? They claim you're an expert in this.
Basically, myself, in terms of just moving forward with the various cities that we've been working with on instituting the policies and helping those varied cities, that background with the experts in the field like Mr. Movagarian, that's basically my tenure. When I was approached, I basically said, we'd love to come and help wherever we can and or give some type of guidance in terms of what we've done with the various cities like Maywood, like Huntington Park, in the jurisdictional areas where we are. So if we can lend a helping hand, we're basically here to be able to assist whatever knowledge we have.
What's puzzling to me is this affects 200,000 people in the city. And for you to meet with one council member, I just don't understand that. We're a council of 5, not 1. In the future, I hope that you would meet individually with us for any type of communication. Really appreciate that. Secondly, I've been to seminars this past year on this marijuana issue from state level. I've listened to them in Sacramento. My concern is if we start listening to local experts, I think the city will be in jeopardy of getting many lawsuits. I'm not saying this to you, but I've listened to the state level people on this marijuana law, and it's very, very important that we are educated on this. So if you do want to meet with us again, I'd appreciate it if you would meet with individually us up here.
We're available, absolutely. Any questions, any concerns?
Thank you very much.
call-
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Gaiva?
You made a comment that caught my attention. When you were approached, are you saying that our council member approached you, you didn't approach them?
No, I had a friend that indicated that there may be guidance needed by a council member, and that person said, through a common concern, saying, maybe you can go ahead and shed some light since you've already assisted in Maywood, Huntington Park, and various other jurisdictions with varied providers. And I said, most definitely, we're here to help, and wherever we can help, we'd like to meet with any of the council as well as staff.
And that was just an off-the-hand remark because of what you had said. I agree with Dave Marquez and myself. I've been to a lot of them, and Martin and I have been to some of those meetings down on Riverside, and it's a very complex issue right now. But I would like to hear from the police department I don't want to skirt the PowerPoint you've got there, Joel, because I think there's some important points that the public should hear about, and I'd really like to hear what the fire department memo
Okay,
and
you're out of
information on
order.
that as well.
You're out of order right now. So right now, we're doing this. and
That's
then
what I'm
we'll have an
asking them.
opportunity.
I'm
Okay?
asking, not them, I'm asking
I know,
them.
but you're out of order right now.
I'm asking them if I.
Okay. All right.
Hear the rest of the
Next.
presentation is what I'd like to hear.
Okay, Councilmember Cabrera, do you have any questions?
I only have one question. So I'm understanding the fact that at the state level, the new legislation is going to go into effect as of January 1st at midnight, essentially January 2nd. And any businesses who submit an application can only get that ticket from the state if there is already something set in place, if they already have a permit in a local jurisdiction, such as a city. My question is, if they receive that ticket, will they actually be able to operate and have doors open during 2018? Because I think it takes about a year or so. So that's my question. Will they be able to operate?
That's a very good question. Nobody knows the answer to that question. Lori Ajax is the individual in charge of this whole state level regulations. We were under the impression that the state has been moved to third quarter 2018, but she's under direct orders that this has to happen January 1st, 2018. So they don't even know how they're gonna. There's only 13 people on their panel, 13 people that know about the state level. So they're gonna have to go through. They're expecting over 20,000 applications the first year. So how they're gonna sort it, how they're gonna word it, how they're gonna go through it, I have no idea. So the best of our knowledge is that they're gonna issue numbers, licenses, temporary permits. So as long as we're within local jurisdiction, we can operate until our numbers called for us to be able to go in front of state and secure a state license. As you know, in the city of LA, there's 1,300 operators operating illegally. Different cities, everybody has their own issues with this business. So cities that are coming forth and regulating this are going to be the ones that are going to be at the forefront. That's what City of Maywood, I know one of the council members mentioned. People call us from all over the state because they've heard of Maywood. You know, such a small city, we're able to successfully pass an ordinance and actually issue licenses with a CUP, and we're within days away from the first operator to be able to operate within the city boundary. So that's how. I don't consider myself to be an expert. I've been in the business for 13 years. I'm a cancer patient myself, leukemia survivor. So not to be disrespectful to anybody here, but I don't consider myself to be an expert. I'm just a guy that knows the business inside out, and here we are, hold the license in City of Maywood.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have Mr. Rednick, if you can please approach the podium and see if council has any questions.
Excuse me, point of order.
Okay. What's your point of order? Okay. No, we're doing these right here. Okay, you're out of order right now. Okay, Mr. Rednick? Okay. Sir, you're out of order. You're out of order.
Listen and answer
Okay.
my question, please.
Okay.
I was asking questions of either the staff or them, which is what you solicited.
All right.
And so therefore, I would like to know if we're gonna finish the rest of this report, because I'd like to hear.
And you need to follow, yeah, we're going to go through it right now. Just wait. No, you're not following protocol. You're not. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Hello. So, yes, I just wanted to touch base on, there's a couple things that I know are going to be brought up about just from other cities that we've found, and safety is the biggest thing. And also another thing that, hasn't been touched on is there is a lot of negative attributes towards the extractions of cannabis, making the oils and things like that, which are kind of that is the way that CBDs are found most readily available. Which are the part of the cannabis plant that helps with the medical side of things. Nowadays, yes, I'm not going to lie, those explosions have happened. There has been many tragic cases about houses exploding, and I'm sure you've heard it or read it all. And the problem with that is it's all being done illegally. It's all being done with improper devices. It's not being done in a professional atmosphere. Nowadays, when they're doing the extractions, they're using extraction devices similar to what they make essential oil with right now. They do them in closed loop systems, so nothing's being released into the air, no flammable chemicals or anything like that. Also, they're being done in blast-proof boxes. In some cities, that's required. And in case there was ever an issue, ever an unforeseen malfunction, it's contained in a safe environment. So these are all steps that have been taken in just that aspect, which a lot of cities just aren't aware about. And there's just a lot of mixed signals coming from different avenues and different resources. So I really just wanted to let you guys know. And if you have any other questions or any other concerns, I'd be more than happy to meet with you guys and help you out with whatever we can.
Any questions for Mr. Rednick? Okay. Okay, 1 second, 1 second. Okay, you're out of order again, council member. Okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go on a recess. Thank you and welcome back to the City Council study session. Just want to make it clear, we are going to have other speakers, okay? We are following a protocol. I, as the mayor, am running this meeting, and I want to make it very clear that if there is a lot of disrespect, then we will just recess the meeting again. So the next speaker that we have is Richard Polanco. If you could please approach the podium. There'll be an opportunity to ask them questions, and then there'll be another opportunity to ask the staff questions as well.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity. Community, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Richard Polanco Jr. I come from the Los Angeles area where I was born and raised, and have watched the cannabis industry grow. I've watched the cannabis industry thrive, and I've watched the cannabis industry not only in the city of Los Angeles, but throughout the Southern California cities. As many of you know on the council, the governor made a decision to take away redevelopment funds. So now cities are looking for alternative ways so that they can make up those revenues. Today with me, I have a few experts. One is a professor from San Diego State who teaches the curriculum on cannabis here in the state of California, and would like to introduce him, if I may.
Definitely.
Hello, Council. Appreciate you guys' time. My name is Eddie Guillen. I'm known in the industry as Eddie Funksta. I have a company called Funksta West Coast, Native Healing Oils. I'm a professor at San Diego State University. I'm teaching the first accredited cannabis horticulture class. I'm teaching on how to grow. I'm also teaching the medical side, the clinical side of Proposition 215. A quick background of me is in February of 1995, I helped collect signatures for Proposition 215. I worked with Dennis Perone and Chris Conrad, the two authors of Proposition 215, and also Richard Eastman. In that time, I've had my grows since the beginning of the proposition, since 1996. I've helped tremendous patients with cancer, AIDS, fibromyalgia, sickle cell anemia, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, just name them. We've helped with a lot of them, endometriosis, cervical cancers. So my work is actual clinical work. When a lot of hospitals give up on patients, I step in and activate very heavily. So we help people in the end of times when they have terminal illnesses, and we help them pass. I've been doing this for many years. I work with an oil called Rick Simpson oil that people know it on the streets. It's actually called Phoenix Tears. The gentleman named Rick Simpson, he's from Nova Scotia, Canada. He's a dear friend of mine. I've worked with him in Europe. I've done legal grows in Switzerland and in Europe in the early 2000s. I've also done work in Humboldt County, and I just came back from Washington State where I helped set up Initiative 502, which is the recreational laws there. And I was also in Colorado setting up some of our grow facilities from Amsterdam that had set up in Colorado. I'm extremely versed in a lot of this. That's why I was reached out by San Diego State University. They didn't want to reach into the community of people that were making money. They wanted to reach into the community of the healers. I work with doctors, nurses, hospice, ICU units, and critical care units, and I've been doing this for over 2 decades. So in that, I'm just bringing the message of business and hope, and that the community needs this. There's tremendous patients out there. One of our #1 products that we make is called Option 2 and Option V, which are suppositories, and they are not inhalants. I've been working with the state of Florida because the state of Florida has just activated a medical marijuana law, and they have no inhalants in their state. So I make canna caps, which are low-dose canna capsules. We make our oils and syringes, and we also make suppositories and topicals. So we don't bring in flour, we don't bring in hashes, we don't bring in these other types of things that society has kind of deemed a nuisance. So in the state of, at San Diego State University, I'm going to actually be teaching a lot of the doctors and nurses in the community there, and they're actually excited about bringing healing to their community. Because what we're trying to bring is not the hippie culture of smoking a joint and hitting bongs. We're actually bringing the real movement of what Dennis Peron meant for Proposition 215, and that's the healing of our communities. That's the healing of our families, our loved ones, and our friends. And so in that, medical cannabis is the #1 tool. If it was found today in the Amazon rainforest, it'd be hailed for all of its healing abilities on the nations. Unfortunately, in 1914, it was abolished in Utah, and then it taken down heavily in 1937. So since that, we've been on a heavy propaganda against us. And so in that movement in the state of Washington, I help with the research to allow us to have more plants for cannabinoidal research, because we have thousands and thousands of receptors in our body. I work with scientists and researchers how cannabis actually works in our body and how many receptors are inside of it and how we're actually made to use this plant in a respectable manner. And so most things will be construed and taken out of context, just like alcohol and tobacco. So this product can be regulated in a very safe regulatory system that can help the community, can drive the community, and can build new infrastructure for the community with schools, police departments, fire departments, ambulance. And these infrastructures are a real system that are happening in the state of Washington, the state of Oregon, and the state of Colorado. 3 states I physically helped work in those systems with the BioTrack system of seed to sale tracking systems. I know research on actually breeding cannabis and extracting cannabinoids. Research facilities and manufacturing facilities are needed here for processing, because these products that you don't smoke need to be processed. And I use ethanol extraction. I have set up blast-proof rooms with Governor Inslee in the state of Washington, with the Washington Liquor Control Board, which is now the Liquor Cannabis Board in the state of Washington, and they actually regulate on making extractions and using volatile substances. So I'm very versatile in this position. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here to say that it is needed in your community. We need more than just a storefront. We need people that grow this place, because there's thousands of jobs that come with growing. There's thousands of jobs that come with producing. There's thousands of jobs that come with manufacturing. There's thousands of jobs that can be in this valley and is needed in this community to bring it back up to the standards that it was when it was brought here in 1984. I was born in 1978. I did come here in 1988 for a few years with some family. I love this place. It's a nice town. I like Paris Lake right behind here. It's a great thoroughfare for the Inland Empire. It can be a great center for cannabis, for your community, and also a good thoroughfare for people passing through and passing out. So in that, in the state, at San Diego State University, I'm also doing some hemp research, and that's the research that actually gets into profits. So medical cannabis, I don't look at it as profits. I look at it in ways that we can help more people that can't afford it. In San Bernardino, I've been helping people that actually come out of the out of the prison system, that have stage 3 and stage 4 AIDS and cancer, and they're ready to pass. And the nuns have been providing this service in San Bernardino for the last 40 years. I've been reaching into there and helping patients get out of the deathbeds and live their life again with medical cannabis, with tinctures, capsules, and suppositories. And so with that, I do believe you guys need visionary help here, not financial visionary help here. You guys need to understand that money will come. The community needs to be saved. If the community is saved, you will change the direction of the country, and this is where the epicenter can be. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate you.
Really quick, Professor, just to ask a couple questions.
Please.
What do you know about the January 2nd or January 1st deadline? And then can the city or a city issue a license by that time, in your professional opinion?
I do believe a city can issue a license in a pretty haste manner. There's a few issues that have to be checked off in the state of Washington. There was really a checklist of only 16 things that had to make sure that they were solidly done. Once again, like the gentleman said here earlier, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about putting it on a new vehicle. Jewelry stores are very much regulated. Liquor stores are very much regulated. These stores are one of the most highest volumes in the community. They take a lot of traffic and they deal with a lot of problems, and jewelry stores have to be protected. So in those things, if you look at their infrastructure and how they manage their things and how local law enforcement treats those businesses, That's how you can easily find out how a medical cannabis business or a recreational cannabis business can be built. So many feet from a school or a park, there's certain rules and regulations that are just simple. You already implemented them on liquor stores and on bars. So those things, it's not really that hard to tap into. And basic buildings and infrastructure on how security is managed and how the flow of business goes, that's what you guys should really look into.
Okay,
And
so-
I have a lot of that knowledge, and my time is
And what would,
very valuable.
What would happen, in your opinion, let's say, for example, the city doesn't do, anything, or they wait until past the January 2nd. How long does it take? What would be the consequences, like, for people that want to apply to the state for a state temporary license?
I think if you guys don't enact something here for your local community with people that are here now, the state's going to overstep you and put their people here, and they're not going to care what your city wants. And that's the real truth. I have done that physically, personally in Colorado and Washington. The communities that banded us when the state said yes, the state said all these lands are open and there are state lands and we'll offer you those lands to grow in. And when we came into a city that didn't offer us anything, we gave them very little on our end. So it is very nice for you guys to be on our end at the beginning, because this is going to move forward and it's got a lot of big business that's coming in. But to be honest with you, big business does not care about Sunnymead. They don't care about Heacock Avenue. They don't care about Moreno Valley Mall. The people that are from here, that pass through here and see it all the time, want to see it dress up pretty nice because they'd like to stop here more.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you all got all that, because there's going to be a test at the end of this council meeting tonight. I'd like to actually invite another speaker here who came from the city of Los Angeles. She worked 14 years in the city Department of Finance. I call her the process, because when there was no process, she accepted the applications in the city and she processed them through the channels that needed to happen. And since then, there's been a tremendous evolution and tremendous economic impact. So if I can just take a minute and introduce Dre.
Oh, she's right here. Okay.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I'm a little nervous, haven't spoken in a while. Good evening to Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Andrea. I'm here tonight to just a little brief overview. When I worked for the City of Los Angeles 14 years for the Office of Finance, which collected over which is and is responsible collecting over 2.5 billion of the city's revenue. In my 14 years, I went ahead and processed the City of Los Angeles permits and the certificates for all businesses, including the medical marijuana industry. It's how I saw the economic growth. We collected so much revenue that it impacted many programs within the city. It helped at the time and is still continuing to help the City of Los Angeles with the deficit that they were in, and has grown within itself at that point. Now at this point, it's evolved into where there will be a cannabis department created, which is still pending. Moving forward, again, all the ordinances were adopted by the City Council, in which Finance then was in charge of collecting the revenue for the dispensaries, and then later on creating basically the guidelines into which guidelines and procedures as to how the dispensaries were supposed to follow, and if not, then certain things would follow with that. I won't get into too much detail after your questions. I encourage this great city of Moreno Valley to move in the direction of the ordinance for all resources. It would benefit the city greatly financially, again, for not only patients, but again, within the growth of the city, revenue-wise, especially right now with this challenging time. I do thank you so much for giving me the time to speak briefly with their knowledge behind me. Any answers any questions that need answering, I open it to you guys. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity. Again, my name is Richard Polanco Jr. My father was a Senate Majority Leader for the great state of California, and we have been following the state regulations and this effort that I think the great state of California will benefit from tremendously at the local level. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity. I'd like to encourage any of you, I will leave my contact information so that if there's any questions that you'd like to hear from some of the experts that spoke tonight, we'd like to make ourselves available. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Richard. Okay. Now, if there's any other questions towards staff or anyone, go ahead and press your speaker button. Okay, Councilmember Gaiba?
Yes. So we are going to hear the rest of the staff report. Am I correct? I'd love to hear that from our staff. This was a little unorthodox because normally we don't have people come out and speak like that. Additionally, I'm quite aware of Hemet, San Jacinto. I know a lot of the council members. They are going through these processes themselves, and I think this is making any major decisions would be very premature at this point until we learn more and more about how it's affecting our neighbors, Riverside's Bandit, and their neighbor to the west. Additionally, I think I'd like the attorney to respond that if we next meeting decide to make it illegal again, extend that illegality, how would that affect this whole process?
Okay. Go ahead, City Attorney.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members. The extension at this point in time has really no effect on the process other than to ensure that the city continues to have a regulation of cannabis in the city. The gentleman was referring to the state coming in and imposing their laws on the city. If there was absolutely no regulations, in other words, if the city was silent on that issue, there would be a risk of state law supplementing or preempting any of our attempts. But the city does have regulation of cannabis in place currently, and that regulation is a total ban. Council can decide to change that regulation at any point in time. The extension that we're going to request next council meeting will simply provide sufficient time for the council to decide and for staff to process whatever direction we receive from you today. In other words, the current ban ends on October 31st. So the extension is needed. I think staff proposed June 30th of next year as the next deadline. And basically that'll just make sure that the city continues to have regulation in place and keeps the state out of preempting or attempting to impose their laws on the city. That gives you the flexibility to move in any direction you wish with regard to regulating that business.
Thank you, because that's why I asked that question. That was my understanding when we did this, that if we extend it, we have regulation in place and they can't do anything about that. So some of the comments there about them coming in is not quite accurate for the public to understand. There's a lot of things yet to learn and digest and bring in to the picture. So that might be the best course of action next week, is just delay it and give us time to put something together by June and really give some honest guidance as to what's in the best interest of the city and 210,000 people.
Okay. And for our police chief, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I am not the local expert on this. We defer to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department Special Investigation Bureau for these kinds of presentations. And we are lucky enough to have Captain Evan Peterson here this evening. And I know that he's got some comments prepared, and I'd like to invite him to the lectern to share those comments with you.
Sure. Captain?
Council audience, Captain Evan Peterson. I run special investigations for the Sheriff's Department. For that, basically, it's running major narcotics for us. It has different divisions, but for us, it's that. The speakers tonight, the last one, the teacher, I will tell you, the part he said about not just the care for the community, but the big businesses coming in, I like hearing that you're not rushing a decision. He's right. I go around to the different cities. All of the cities are dealing with the same situation. The speakers tonight were very accurate concerning their concerns, and I like hearing that you're not rushing to a decision, because for us, we're highly concerned about the public safety aspect. We talk to our partners in LA. We talk to our partners in San Bernardino, Orange County, San Diego County. And we also talk to our partners in Washington and Colorado. We see the statistics. There are statistics that are negative for us, crime statistics that are on the rise. And how it boils down at the basic micro level for us is an increase in public safety costs, and that concerns us. My number one phone call right now in the county is dealing with, hey, my neighbor is growing. Hey, I think some mentioned earlier, have a grow house. All of those kind of things are largely our calls right now. It's not the 6 plants that we're dealing with. We do the eradications lately on the 10s, 20s, and 30,000 plants that are growing illegally. So it's difficult right now for us to listen to because, of course, we have a hard time. We're law enforcement, obviously. We have a hard time with accepting any kind of legalization of narcotics. But more importantly, as us managers understand, it comes down to the dollars and cents of public safety, and that's the part that really concerns us. So I will say for us, yes, we're highly concerned about, obviously, any passing, and regulation is obviously what's necessary. We recognize the voters have spoken, but for you guys not rushing to a decision, I think is an excellent idea.
Thank you, Captain. And I don't think we're rushing,
Yeah.
to a decision, which is
Very
good.
much so, very much
This
so.
is a study session, so
Yep, very
there's
much
no
so.
decision making, but we will be directing staff.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Cabrera, do you have any questions for the captain, or no? Okay, sorry, no questions.
I thought you were done. I
Okay.
apologize. Go ahead, guys.
I have questions, and
Oh.
I'll direct them to
It's just for
Chief
staff.
Ontiveros and
Sounds good.
staff. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you, Captain.
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, a couple of months ago, last time I checked, I actually sat down with Chief Ontiveros, and the last time I heard, the number of illegal dispensaries that are in our city was 12. Is that still where we stand?
That question would be better addressed to the city attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Of the 12 that were referenced, and I can't speak for any ones that may have opened since then that we're not aware of, but I think we're aware of most of them. I think 3 or 4 of them have been closed.
Okay, so we're down around 8, 9. Okay.
That would be a number I would be comfortable with.
Okay. Next question. Reading through the police report, or the staff report from the PD, I saw something in there, it was, I believe, the second slide about the cost for new training for police officers, specifically to go after or deal with cannabis-related issues. I don't remember the number, it was over $1 million. When we're talking about recovering fees from these potential businesses that will come into cities, does that fall into that category? Will we be able to recoup those training costs, and not just the training, but the time that it'll take our police officers to leave duty or anything else and go receive that training? Will we be able to recover those costs from fees, not taxes, from fees?
Again, that would be a question for the city attorney and also for Captain Peterson, who can tell you more about what other locations have experienced, such as the state of Colorado, which has probably the deepest or the most information as far as breadth and depth goes with regard to how their public safety has been impacted and how those dollars, those tax dollars, have been gathered and spent.
So, city attorney, can you answer that? Will the fees be recovered?
City is allowed to recover any direct costs without having the detail of what exactly who's being trained, why, and there are things that are missing from the equation for me to give you a definitive answer. What I can tell you is that any direct cost resulting from permitting, processing, or operating the business in the city are recoverable legally by the city.
Thank you. Just one more, and it's two different things, but they kind of go hand in hand. So a while ago, we talked about a tax, a potential tax, which would go on top of sales tax. That has to go on a ballot, right, for the next general election if we decided to do so. Is that correct?
The city has the ability to tax the industry, but that permission to tax needs to be obtained from the voters. I would not characterize it as being on top of the sales tax. It's a whole separate tax. And yes, at any general election, next one will be in November of 18, to the best of my knowledge, because I don't think June is a general election in this area. The council could put a ballot measure on the ballot, which would, if voted in the affirmative, allow us to tax any of the allowed uses, should you decide to allow any uses.
Okay, and then this one goes, I believe it goes together. I've heard of other cities in their battle trying to shut down illegal operations. They put something in place to where they can shut down utilities, whether that be water, electricity, if there was an illegal dispensary or an illegal grow operation, for example. Could we potentially do that as well in our fight toward trying to shut down illegal operations?
The short answer is yes. Under certain circumstances, if the operation constitutes an imminent threat to public health and safety, those are some of the measures that are available. We would probably need to review our ordinances that control that and potentially amend them to put that into place.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. If there's any further requests or communications? Did you push yours? Yeah, okay. Councilmember Gaiba?
I found the, Joel, were you going to give the presentation on the police? Because I found that very, very enlightening, and that's the way the public might be able to see it.
If you're talking about the PowerPoint
Yeah, the
presentation, that's
PowerPoint.
why Captain Peterson is here tonight.
Yeah, okay.
He's got that presentation.
Can we have him do that? Because it's very beneficial for the public to see those Colorado numbers and everything. We can see them here, but it'd be really good if he could do the PowerPoint presentation. So may I ask that we do that?
Can we have the captain come over? I know it's a pretty lengthy PowerPoint, so if you could just, if you could just, just highlight the points to it.
And Mayor, if I may, Honorable Mayor, Council members, that material is available on the internet on our website.
Yes, and it's been available, I think, 12 days. But yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask. Can you show me what you have, guys? I don't have what you were talking about. I
It's
have a thumb drive
PowerPoint.
with it.
Yeah, it was a PowerPoint presentation. It was attached to the agenda.
I didn't get to see any of that. Thank you. Yep. Does the public get to see this? Yeah, this. is
And then
what
if
I
you
have.
don't have it connected, you could, just tell us, on page 1 that, or
That's what I was
something.
going to ask. Is this something that you want up on the screen, guys? Do you need my thumb
No,
drive for
it
it,
looks
or what
like
would
they
you
don't,
like?
they don't have it, right? Okay. That's okay. If you could just give us a highlight of the presentation.
I do. I didn't know. Sounds good. Even easier. Thank you.
I'll give you a minute there.
And Mayor, in the captain's defense, that PowerPoint was sent. I don't know what happened to it, but it was sent. It may have been misplaced here somewhere. I don't know. So sorry.
Oh,
for
no,
the delay.
yeah, it was attached. I read it. It was there.
Okay.
Yeah, for 12, it was there.
I apologize because it says on our thing, presentation. So that's why I was asking to see it, because it's very revealing information.
And if I might also say that this is a standard presentation that has been given across the county to city councils that have considered these kinds of measures. So this was not tailored for Moreno Valley. It's the sheriff's presentation that is taken across the county.
Let's go ahead and take a 2-minute break.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
and
it,
that'll
guys.
help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And welcome back to the city council meeting. We just came from recess. We're going to have, is it Captain Stevenson?
Captain Evan
Evan
Peterson.
Peterson, okay. Give us a brief presentation on the PowerPoint that's attached.
Thank you, guys. I was happy you got to see this. I wasn't sure, so just a few minutes. I'll run through it real quick. To highlight some of the things we've discussed, of course, in my area, of course, in Captain Ontiveros' area, we deal with the other states that are going through. Obviously, they're in front of us on the legalization aspect, but for us, we're concerned to the public safety side of things. Its impacts on us, how it changes things overall for us, and then lastly, I think some mentioned it, getting into the extraction side of the fence. It's been really deadly for us. So in dealing with those kind of things, that was really what caused us to kind of start speaking to the cities concerning councils and our direct, how that's going to impact us. The Colorado challenges, they've seen it directly. We've seen and dealt with a lot of statistics. Running through it, their homelessness has greatly increased. Their thefts have increased. And of their thefts, I think we see it in a later slide, their theft increases, the largest percentage of those increases has come from their marijuana-related businesses. We get to see that on a smaller level now because it's not as obviously large for us. Those are some of the highlights concerning what is for us obviously a negative impact on our communities. The part of things for us, we deal with DUIs, we deal with DUI-related deaths. Nobody has come up with yet the impairment factor of marijuana and how it will relate to our officers concerning the DUI requirements around that. Right now under California, it's a very easy, simple process that all of us are very familiar with, even the public is familiar with, concerning DUI and alcohol and how those field sobriety tests exactly get down to whether you're obviously, I'll say, above the legal limit or below the legal limit. We don't have those set for marijuana. So there's a huge training component there. You talked about recovery of costs and training on the law enforcement side of things. That is a concern for us because that brings about a whole new set of issues because as we are seeing, I think some mentioned it earlier, we're seeing a much higher THC content in the marijuana that's being grown, cultivated, and extracted now. And then that's creating a greater high and a greater impairment for us. So that's another side of things that we have noticed that Colorado has already experienced on our level of saying that they deal with regularly. Some of their crime data, they really talk about things are on the rise. What we notice is it is on the rise across all areas we noticed. Are they large jumps in percentages? No, I could see just a steady increase is what it seems to me, and what we relate it to is exactly what they're talking about. The officers on the street level in the calls for service are saying that they are experiencing higher volume calls for service since the changes for their state. And that's really kind of boiling out all the other stuff that boils down to for us as law enforcement managers, what we're most concerned about for obviously our community responses. Washington, they talk about on the Washington side of the fence, it was an area that we don't always think about on the crime side of things, of the public health side of the fence. They were seeing large increases in their poison control, in their emergency responses, and those kind of things. We don't always deal with that. So these are some of the ancillary things that we're going to have to start concerning ourselves with on that substance abuse factor of the public health side of the fence, their increase for youth and calls for overdoses and those kind of things. Like some mentioned earlier regarding the community, how many children and whatnot. It was exactly what we were talking about when we parceled out those numbers and those higher demands that we could see on that system. Federal law. I work with the DEA largely all the time for us, for Riverside County. I'm our arm of things. It is still what they classify as a Schedule I narcotic. It is still 100% illegal federally, and the Attorney General's office has reinforced that. Has that translated down all the way to obviously our state, city levels yet? No, it has not. It's still a gray area, quite frankly. And so that is the pushback between the two that we deal with in the policing side of the fence concerning in a community, yet the federal government still says it's highly illegal. So hence why It is our shop that is responding to the grows. It is our shop that is taking down the houses or the large grows that some of you read about in the mountains and those kind of things. That is why that is occurring still. Some of the law enforcement impacts. We just recently, I liked in your staff report, it even mentioned, I'll get to the section on some of our honey oil extraction we're seeing. There are some serious concerns for us. Our violent crime rate increases related to it. Our theft increases related to it. Our home, I think some of you mentioned, looking for a professional scheme of things is if we're going to regulate extraction, we still have the home extractors. And the home extractors, as you recently saw in Wildemar, I think you referenced it in your staff report, yeah, there's children present and houses are exploding and those kind of things. That greatly concerns us, obviously. And then we get to some of the things you talked about, the increased training costs to officers, or for us as the managers, the increased call volume. And that's what obviously is what we worry about. Some of the challenges. The DEA still classifies it, I'll just say the DEA, the federal government still classifies it as a felony. It's illegal. So for us, working major narcotics, how that comes down to now a city scheme and a city level, we do still deal with what I'll call the cartels. For lack of a better term, we call them drug trafficking organizations and the black market. Some people referenced it tonight. That is some of the reality for us because of our proximity, obviously, to Mexico. That's still one of our greatest areas where we get it from over the border. And so that is one of our fights, obviously, coming into all of our cities. And whether regulatory or not, we're fighting on a larger scale some of that, obviously, drug trafficking organization type deliveries, drop-offs, and everything connected to that we know brings about a whole nother set of violence and things connected to them. The key concerns for us, it talks about that we legalized it here, but it is not legal in other states. And so what we're seeing a lot in my side of the fence for the department and my counterparts in the surrounding agencies is they are trying to get it out to those states as quickly as they can. And that's because of the money factor. The drug trafficking organization factor can, let's say, grow it here, bring about the problems that we have here, but then ship it out to, obviously, that black market for them where they can make a heck of a lot more money. And so those are some of the concerns that it all boils down to because, again, it's illegal federally. We are concerned with some of those banking laws and the things that make it so we deal in these cash businesses and the crime related with those kind of things. And so that's part of it as well. I have this slide in here. It gets to some of our larger issues that we're dealing with in law enforcement concerning some of our propositions that we passed and how these propositions are now funneling down to what we're dealing with in our communities, drug offenses, people being released, and some of those kind of things just being a reality. Legalization hurts us in that area on the law enforcement side of the fence, and that's why I reference it. Some of the changes. We're going to need the personnel. That just becomes a reality. As I talk to my counterparts in Colorado, as I talk to my counterparts in Washington, that's what they're seeing because, again, it boils down from that regulatory sense of all of these cities figuring out where they want to allow it to now for us in the public safety element having the additional call volume. You guys get to see them. You get to see, obviously, the statistics for the city of Moreno Valley and how those translate. And that translates for us on Camaroneros and our management side of where we can handle those call volumes, response times, and the things that are related to everything connected to this industry, obviously. Some of the things I think I touched on, just to keep it short and brevity for you guys. I add this part just real quick so everybody could see it. Like I mentioned, I was very happy he had it in the staff report. This is one of our primary concerns for, I will say, the public health I mentioned earlier and what Washington recognized. We see the public health factor on this very high for us. They mentioned the explosion in Wildemar. If we catch them early, the guys catch them early, then it makes it so that we don't have the exploding homes and the things surrounding that and the violence that comes with. butane honey oil, the extraction of it, and it is very much a what we saw earlier, I will say 80s and 90s of home drug labs and those kind of things. It is very much on the forefront of that. So we're concerned about seeing that increase come that January 1st, allowing for legalization across the areas. And so as I run through some of those slides, I was happy you got to read and see part of it. It talks about the injury and what we're getting of death concerning this, and the other counties that are experiencing the same. Guys, that pretty much covers all of it. I appreciate you you allowing me to talk about some of that. Yeah.
Thank you, Captain.
Any further questions on any of that, guys?
Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and allow the council to either ask questions, comments, or give direction, just only one round, and then we'll move from there. Okay? Thank you, Captain. So this is the time if you'd like to make a comment or provide direction to staff. Okay, Councilmember Marquez.
Captain, on your BHO and the state of California.
Go ahead.
On that statement there, it refers to medical marijuana dispensaries can legally sell honey oil. Now, you just said that that's very explosive in the process of extracting it?
What we're experiencing is the home jobs is what I'm saying versus what I think some of our speakers earlier referenced, some of the very professional jobs that are obviously very regulated, have the, I'll say, blast facility, because it is a reality and a concern over exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
In the city, I think you referenced it in the staff report of an explosion at a home. We more meant that, of the home jobs that are trying it out.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Gaiba.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because that's a piece of the puzzle. The public, it's on the website, but a lot of people sit around and watch this, and they'll watch it over and over.
Sure.
Video is also available to be downloaded when we have this. So I think the public really needed to see the other side of this. So really appreciate your presentation on that information. Thank you, Joel, for bringing that and having it there. For my sake right now, I have no direction for staff, because I think it's premature right now. We've just had this first study session, and I think we still have more time, lots more to do some research. I, for one, am very familiar with the other cities that are involved in some of this and their council members, and haven't been conversing with them already. I'd like to see how things flush out with them. But even better question than that is, we could regulate one part of this and the others are still illegal, and they would still be a problem to our city unless we have all of it in our city all at once and all regulated. Then any one part of those, how many were there, Martin? 4 items?
There are 4 general categories.
4 general
of
categories. Unless
activity.
you regulate all 4 general categories within the city, any one of those then could be your problem child. And I think you brought that up in the PowerPoint. You know, we could say, okay, we're going to regulate the dispensaries, but now all of a sudden you've got grow houses all over the place.
Right.
Oh, now we got to regulate that one too. So I think there's a whole lot of stuff that we have to really consider deeply from the staff. And for me, my position would be, let's wait till the next meeting, delay it until June, gives us plenty of time to do our research, and then we can give proper direction and input from the rest of the community too. So that's where I'm at. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this with us.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Baca.
Captain Peterson, I just want to say thank you. Is my,
Yeah, it's
okay. I guess I can't hear myself. I just want to say
put it a
thank you
little
for bringing that information to us. It's very important for the city council to see what the challenges are as far as public safety. And I can assure you that my colleagues all take what you said, what you've presented, Chief Ontivero's position and all that to heart. And we're going to, you know, if this goes forward, we'll do our due diligence to make sure that our community foremost is safe.
Good.
So thank you.
Councilmember Cabrera?
Yeah, Captain. Definitely, you know, I appreciate you coming out and giving that presentation and offering that information to the public because it's the truth. And right now, where we stand, you know, recreationally, it's still illegal all across the state. Come January 1st, even though whatever we choose to do, even if we have a ban on it, all across the state, it's going to become legal recreationally.
Yeah.
So we're still going to have to fight against these illegal BHO labs and all these things. And so, it's good to know that stuff and the statistics from other states, and also to see what they're doing to counteract the repercussions, you know, the unforeseen consequences. So, just want to say thank you for coming out.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, and I just wanted to say thank you, Captain, as well for the presentation. Thank you to the public. As far as you know, it's always good to hear both sides.
Sure.
You know, to any
Absolutely.
argument.
Nope, absolutely.
And so I, thank you, for being able to, at least you had the thumb drive still, so that's good. Now you can see the put the presentation on there. And I understand, that there's, the public safety concerns. I think those are things that, we can definitely work out. One of the things that we got to keep in mind, though, too, is that with regulation, so once we've actually, let's say, have something in place, we can actually have where we can recover fees to have, officers or additional patrol. So that's one thing, that we should also consider as well, and maybe with the recovery of the training and those kinds of things as well. But I'd like to hear more information as well. So, that's why I would like to ask for the staff, especially at another meeting, to bring an ordinance to the meeting to allow multiple uses. And that would actually allow the public to weigh in more and provide more input on that. So I'd like to make a motion to bring an ordinance allowing multiple uses subject to conditional use permit and licensing regulation. Okay. Oh, you can go ahead and have a seat, Captain. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. What? Yeah, it's just a direction.
And just so staff is clear, basically the council is looking to look at a template that can be, for lack of a better word, worked on or considered by the council. Obviously, CUP ordinance and actual adoption of code changes would need to go through the regular process.
Yeah, of course.
But as I understand it, you're looking for another study session or a meeting.
Not another study session, another meeting. With
Where
an
we can
ordinance.
present
Yes.
an ordinance which basically has blanks in it, and we can allow the council to work with it and work with staff.
Yeah, it would be the first reading.
What
So-
we're looking
Well,
for is direction on
yeah.
which activities specifically of the ones that the city attorney has discussed with you, the different activities that
Go ahead.
could be allowed. Which ones do you want noted in that ordinance?
Okay, I was looking at the staff report. So what I'm asking, and I hope I get the support of my peers, is that all the commercial activities subject to a conditional use permit and licensing be on the ordinance. I don't want, my concern is that we have illegal activity going on and there's nothing we can do about it. I want it regulated, I want it licensed, and I want no more illegal dispensaries, illegal anything that has to do with cannabis. I want everything licensed and regulated.
So the council is looking for an ordinance that's ready for first reading.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, and with the understanding that that's going to go through the planning commission process before it gets to you. Okay. And just as an aside, unfortunately, Mayor Pro Tem, we could regulate all 4 uses, and I can guarantee you that there still will be illegal activity that's going to have to be controlled outside of the ordinance process.
Yes, but we're going to do our best to
Absolutely.
make sure that our community is safe and that everyone's licensed and inspected, and that we have law enforcement in place to supervise, patrol, et cetera. That'll all come with this afterwards. But in the meantime, just want to make sure that the dispensaries that exist today, that they understand that they're not going to be able to exist after the licensing and the regulations come into place in the manner that they're existing today. I have complaints from local businesses, and I don't want to see you, city attorney, and your staff chasing and wasting your time, in my opinion, closing down these illegal dispensaries. Let's make them legal and regulate and license them, and in the future, I see taxing them. That's what I want to see.
Okay.
Okay, so my original motion, or it doesn't really have to necessarily be a motion because it's a study session, but is to direct staff to bring in ordinance allowing multiple uses, through the whole process, through, you go through the planning commission and, get that public input. And also, again, obviously, when it goes to the council meeting, there will be an opportunity for the public as well to weigh in, of course, and as well as the other council. But I think we need to start, a process, that says that, I think, that this is where we want to go, to allow multiple uses. And obviously, that'll be debated at the first reading. So that'll be debated at that time.
So are you looking for, and I'm sorry to belabor it, just looking for specific direction, are you looking to have, to review a draft ordinance before it goes to the Planning Commission? Or is this the last time you want to discuss it before it goes to Planning Commission?
If it needs to go to the Planning Commission, of course, it'll go to the Planning Commission. If there's anything that doesn't need to go to the Planning Commission, if we can have that ready next week, the next council meeting.
Mayor Pro
Yeah.
Tem,
Wait 1 second. Go ahead, City Attorney.
the ordinance that regulates basically the licensing ordinance is not an ordinance that would generally go to the Planning Commission. I cannot tell you that that ordinance would be ready for you to consider at the next meeting. Staff will do our best to bring it to you as soon as possible because it will not go through the Planning Commission process. But I would expect that to be sometime in November.
Okay, so just really quick, just to clarify, the direction is to allow multiple uses in the ordinance as far as with the regulation one. The land use one, I mean, obviously, that would have to go through Planning Commission, right?
Well, both would pertain to all 4 categories of commercial activity. At least that's how I understood the motion.
But the
So both the regulating one and the land use one will address all 4 categories.
But the regulating one, that one can go directly to council?
That is correct. That does not need to go through the planning.
So that's the one where I'm actually saying is to allow multiple uses subject to conditional use permit and licensing regulation. And if you can have it, I believe we have do we have an October 24th? Check, we don't have an October 24th? Okay, so, at that special meeting, the October 24th meeting. Is there consensus from the council? Okay, Councilor Cabrera, you fine? Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, October 24th. Okay. Okay. So that'll be for the business regulation side. Okay. Yeah, but I think the 24th gives them some more time. Okay. All right, so there's consensus from,
Yeah, just I want to make sure that we have consensus for that direction.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there's 3. Okay. All right. So that's the direction, and we'll go ahead. I'd like to just really quick.
Mayor, can I say something?
Yeah, there's no closing comments.
Well, in our package, we have a memo from the fire department. We haven't even touched that yet.
Yeah.
I think we should
Yeah.
give the chief.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I understand. We already gave direction to staff. It was attached to the
Well, now we're rushing it.
staff
and
report.
I didn't think we wanted to rush this issue.
So we're not rushing it. Thank you. I just want to go ahead and close in memory of the people that were victims to the fires across the state of California. Let's keep them in our prayers. Thank you.